Hi guys, welcome to yet another episode of Funeral Home Talk with Annayyyy. Before I jump into today's story that I have to share, I did want to share a little bit of the process in California with burying, cremating, scattering at sea, all of that good stuff. That's one of the questions that popped up since last week's episode is why does the process take so long here versus Mexico? In Mexico, when somebody passes away, you can view them the same day and bury the next. That's not how things work here. It's a longer process because, again, there's laws in place that we have to abide by, and we do have to get what's called a permit for disposition of remains through the Department of Health, the state of California. So the way it works is when someone passes away, again, keep in mind if someone passes away of natural causes, a terminal illness such as cancer, or they had a history, diabetes, hypertension, if somebody passes from natural causes, it will not be what we call a coroner case. Your loved one will not be transported to the coroner's office. Now, if there's a death where it's not natural causes, it's an accident, a suicide, a homicide, a car accident, a shooting, anything that's not concerning any health, it's an automatic coroner case. And also keep in mind that it matters where you pass away. So let's say your cousin decided to go on vacation, originally from Los Angeles County, decided to go down to Santa Barbara or San Diego. Let's just say San Diego. And he or she gets into an accident there, passes away, automatic San Diego coroner case. So he or she will be transported to the coroner there. They will conduct an investigation to make sure that there was no foul play. And then once that's said and done, they contact the family. They let them know, hey, your loved one is ready to be picked up by the funeral home of your choice. So at that time, the legal next of kin would contact the funeral home and say, hey, my cousin is at this, facility. Can you guys please pick up? There is a form that you have to sign in order for us to be able to pick up your loved one. So there's a lot that plays a part before we can get that famous permit for disposition of remains. So once we have set in stone of where the person passed, let's say, for example, it is at a hospital. Most deaths happen at hospitals. Okay. And let's say it's at Torrance Memorial. So if your loved one passed at Torrance Memorial Hospital and they were admitted into the hospital, then the doctor who was attending them at the time of passing is the doctor responsible for signing the death certificate. So if your loved one passed away in the emergency room, then it would be the doctor who last saw him prior to passing. It would be considered his primary care physician. So again, let's say person passed in Torrance Memorial, was being admitted, seen by Dr. Patel. Dr. Patel is responsible for signing the death certificate. What does that entail? Well, that's where I come in. That's what I do now. I'm a death certificate clerk. So I would get a hold of Dr. Patel's information, office number, call them and say, hey, my name is Annayyyy with so-and-so funeral home, and I wanted to confirm that Mr. Smith was in fact Dr. Patel's patient. If so, can I please have a fax number to send over the causes of death worksheet? That causes of death worksheet needs to be filled out by the doctor and sent back to us ASAP so we can get started with the death certificate process. They then give me the fax number. I send over that worksheet. They have to fill out basically telling me what the person passed away from. So let's say the person passed from a heart attack. Okay, but what led to the heart attack? What chronic conditions did the person have? Did the person have hypertension? Did the person have diabetes? Did the person have cancer? So it's very, very critical that they give chronic conditions. So once they give me those causes, they send them back to me. Mind you, a lot of these doctors don't cooperate. They decide to go on vacation. It's a process. That's what makes the process lengthier. So once the doctor sends us those causes back, I can then get started, log into what's called the electronic death registration system, or EDRS for short. I log in and I input all the information the doctor gave me, and then we do what's called submit medical information for approval. This goes to the health department. Depending what county is what health department reviews it. So in this case, let's say Torrance Memorial, that's LA County. LA County would review the causes, look it over and say, okay, everything looks good. Or, wait a minute, cardiac arrest, but what caused it? What chronic condition led to the cardiac arrest? So again, let's say it was cardiac arrest followed by prostate cancer. Okay, they approve it. Once they approve it, we have to fax over what's called a physician attestation. This is sent directly from the state to the doctor's office, letting doctor know, hey, we just need this final signature and we'll be done. You catch my drift here? Very lengthy. I mean, like I said, we really, really, really appreciate when doctors' offices cooperate. When they don't, it's the worst. Because family wants, they want to lay their loved one to rest. They want to cremate their loved one. They want to be able to grieve. And sometimes the delays that happen because of the doctor's offices, I mean, it's terrible. So once the doctor finally signs that physician attestation, they send it back to the state. Then we can go in and we can submit now for the local registrar to review everything, all the vital information we gathered from the family, like the first, middle, last name, date of birth, social security. They also ask for occupation and industry of the person, the last job that they had when they were living. I've had questions of, well, why do you need that information? A lot of it is for statistical purposes. That's the best that I can describe it. So after we submit all the vital information along with the doctor's signature, we then have the death certificate registered. Once that's registered, automatically the permit gets issued or registered as well. And the permit we created prior to us submitting all of this information one final time. And that's why a lot of times funeral homes will ask you here in California, keep that in mind. It's only in California. What is the final disposition for your loved one? Will you be burying him or her? Will you be cremating him or her? If you're cremating, will you be keeping the ashes at home? Do you plan to scatter at sea? All of that matters because all of that goes on the permit. So once we're told, well, we're cremating and I'm keeping the ashes, perfect. I will put down your name and your address as the place you're keeping the ashes. So that is why it takes so long to be able to cremate or bury someone. Again, if the doctor's office cooperates and gets me the causes in one day and I can get it approved by the health department and then they can sign that same day, wonderful. We're more than happy to provide those services to the family right then and there. But it's very, very rare when these doctors cooperate. I don't know, they're busy. They have 1,001 excuses. And then when the families decide to call them and say, hey, what's taking so long? They tend to blame it on us at the funeral home. So like I said, it's a very lengthy process and it's not fun. It's not fun, but I do love what I do because at the end of the day, I do it for the families. They lost a loved one, and the way that I see it is the less stress that they can have worrying about the funeral process, the more room that they have to grieve. I hope that clarifies a little bit of why it's so lengthy here compared to Mexico. I mean, in Mexico, I'm pretty sure you could buy a death certificate for someone who's not even dead, just to go and have a vacation. So, I mean, it's crazy. But, so that's that. Now, we're going to get into my story for today. Let's see, this was, I want to say maybe about 5, 6 years ago when I was working at the crematory. I used to work at a crematory. It was a combo, so it was a crematory and a cemetery, both in the same spot. And this particular day, I happened to have a training that I had to do for the EDRS system. Again, the electronic death registration system. You have to be certified in order to be able to go in the system and do a death certificate and register and do all that good stuff. So I had to do a training. This training was for the fetal death registration system. So when I was going to get into the whole training, it was very loud in the office, and we did have a chapel down the hall that was connected to the office and the crematory all in the same building. So I told my manager, I said, hey, do you mind if I take the laptop and I go to the chapel? It's very loud in here and I can't concentrate. And he said, yeah, sure. Just make sure you take the charger so your laptop won't die. Okay. So I grabbed the laptop, I grabbed the charger, I go into the chapel. I sit in one of the pews because it's a very old, I mean, I don't know about now, but back then it was a very old chapel. They still had pews. So I sit down, I find a little comfortable spot, I plug in my laptop, I'm logging into the training. I, put in my name, all that good stuff, waiting for the meeting to start, the training, I should say. As I'm sitting there, all of a sudden I hear, and I said, come in. I'm thinking maybe I forgot to do something, or I really thought it was my manager at the door. Silence. Crickets. Nothing. Nobody. So I said, you know what? He's probably messing around. We would mess around a lot, play pranks on each other. I didn't think anything of it. I said, you know what? I don't have time. I'm doing a training. Like, how disrespectful is this jerk? Like, really? Whatever. I ignored it. The training started at this point. I'm paying attention, taking notes, learning, doing all the good stuff that good girls do, right? Next thing you know, maybe 15, 20 minutes into the training, again, you hear. And I'm like, come in. I'm doing a training. Like, you're being rude. If you're going to come in, just come in. Stop knocking. Nothing. Complete silence again. At this point, I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm going to open that door. I'm going to stand right next to the door. The next knock that I hear, I'm going to open it. And whoever it is, I'm going to just punch him dead in the throat. So that's what I did. I sat my laptop down on the pew and I tiptoed to the door. I had to tiptoe because we had wooden floors. And since the building was so old, I'm sure a lot of you know, if you have wooden floors at home that are really, really old, they squeak for no reason, especially for us fat people. It feels like the floor is like, help, help, So I tiptoed to the door. I'm standing next to the door and I'm like, oh, I'm ready. I'm ready. Again, 10, 15 minutes go by. Oh, I busted the door open. Nobody was there. I felt goosebumps all the way to my fundillo. If you know what a fundillo is, good for you. If you don't ask. All the way to my fundillo. I was like, oh, no. Somebody's messing with me. So I'm like, you know what? It's stupid me, right? I closed the door again. And I'm like, you know what? It's just my mind. It's my head. It's one of those. Same thing with the old man, right? Oh, it's just my head playing games on me. Next thing you know, the coffee's brewing. So, again, 20 minutes go by at the most. I opened the door again. I busted it open. Nobody there. So, at this point, I ran down to the crematory because the crematory was literally around the corner from the chapel. And the guy that works the crematory operator that we call him, we'll call him Pancracio for his, protection. So I go down there, I'm like, Pancracio! And he yells, every time I would walk in, he would yell. Dirty conscience, I guess. Poor guy. So I yell, Pancracio! And he has it's a huge spatula. I want to say it's about 8 foot long.